Let's go and take a look at the big board with the latest results on the race for the president in the United States. This is 63% of the precincts reporting in the national race. In terms of the popular vote, President Trump is in the lead by 50%, but it is statistically a tie. Joe Biden not far behind, 49% of the vote. We're also looking at the electorate. You need 270 electoral votes to win the presidency. At last count of 11:08 tonight, Joe Biden has 209 electoral votes. Donald Trump only 112.
Let's talk with our two political analysts and get their thoughts on some of the key races that we're watching. Joining us, Dr. Rashad Richey and Jake Evans. Gentlemen, thanks so much. And Rashad, let me start with you as we take a look at this map. It's interesting to me that we had, it seems like right now, a reversal of what we saw back 4 years ago, where Donald Trump lost the popular vote and yet won the Electoral College. This time around, it might be the opposite with Joe Biden.
Well, it seems to be shaping up that way, Rick. Here's the thing. It's real simple to call this on election night. Here's how you look at the numbers. Popular vote doesn't really matter. The Electoral College is what matters. You need 270 Electoral College votes in order to have what's called a constitutional mandate to govern. Right now, as of last count, my numbers have Joe Biden at 209 and Donald Trump at 118. You still have more to go. The magical number is 270. That's what we should be looking at. That should be the focus for the rest of the night. And I know many people are looking to see how some of these swing states fare out in the next few minutes.
Jake, early polls were showing that critics were saying that the Trump vote is typically undercounted. They were really looking at Florida. There was anticipation that if Trump won Florida, he would have a pathway to possibly winning this election this time around. Are you still optimistic that he may pull through?
Yeah, absolutely. And your point is exactly right. Florida, to me, was the most important early state because you're going to be able to tell, depending on the results in Florida, what the long-term polling, the accuracy of the polling data, and then you're going to be able to extrapolate nationally on that. If you look at what we have right now, Trump, if I'm a betting person, is more likely than not going to win this election. This tells me that his message is resonating with voters. This tells me that he was driving out his base. If you look at the Rust Belt, Michigan, Wisconsin, both, it's still early, but both are leaning him. Arizona, throughout this campaign, to me, was my biggest worry. They're at 73% in, and Trump's down. But I think he undoubtedly has a viable pathway, and if I'm a betting man, I'd be betting on him.
All right, and we are just getting word that Donald Trump has won the state of Nebraska, a red state, so not a huge surprise there. And Rashad, you're right. The popular vote doesn't count. It's all about the Electoral College. But if we talk about the state of our country and where we are right now in 2020, if you look at those raw numbers from the popular vote, our country seems just as divided now as it did 4 years ago.
I agree 100%. And I was thinking about this before the segment, and tweeting and talking back and forth with other analysts across the country. And I said very clearly that right now what you're seeing is an anti-establishment sentiment still here in the United States of America. We know that part of the attraction of Donald Trump when he ran for president the first time was the fact he was not like anyone else. He was an anti-establishment figure in the world of establishment politics. Well, even with him being in office for 4 years, this race is close because many American voters still believe that the establishment party politics has to go, that this is probably the beginning of the end of what we know as establishment politics. As usual, Donald Trump represents that to many. This race is closer than many expected. And let me say this on the other side, because there were many Trump supporters who said Trump would win this thing by a blowout. That is not happening. He's an incumbent president who's holding on for dear life in order to retain the presidency, and he may not win. So both sides, they have some soul searching to do if we want to unify this country and make it all it can be.
Jake and Rashad, this question is for both of you. Jake, I'll let you start first. No real surprises yet, but what benchmarks are you looking for to see when that sea shift will start to change in either candidate's direction?
Sure. Well, the big thing is early on, Biden was going to have a lot more easy victories than Trump did. And that shows. I mean, he's currently right now in the Electoral College, but Trump is within striking distance of winning a number of the critical states: North Carolina, Ohio, Michigan possibly. Pennsylvania is going to come very important down the line, and coming back to where we are right now, Georgia. So if he begins to deliver blows on those states, the gap is, because that's a lot of Electoral College votes for each of those. Pennsylvania alone has 20. You're going to be able to get closer and closer to that 270 mark. So it's very plausible, I would say, in the next couple of hours, if Trump gets 2 or 3 of those states called, that he's in a good position. Now, some of them are just not going to happen because of the late mail-in ballots, and that's what distinguishes this election from many, many in years past, is we're going to have a week or so before some of the final ballots are counted.
Rashad, we are waiting to hear from Kelly Loeffler. Senator Loeffler is expected to come out and talk to her supporters there. As we now know, she will face Reverend Raphael Warnock in a runoff election to see who wins that Senate seat, and that election will be January 5th. What do you expect from that race between Warnock and Loeffler? It's only for the remaining 2 years on Johnny Isakson's 6-year term. So 2 years from now, whoever wins is going to have to run again, right?
That's right, they will. This will be an election about contrast and differences. This will not be an election about similar items, similar narratives, but about distinctions. And what we've noticed in this election cycle is that the conversations are very different. What Democrats are talking about, Republicans are not talking about. What Republicans are talking about, Democrats are not talking about. Usually the election comes down to similar items with different methodologies. You do not see that happening. You see very different conversations. Here's what happens in a runoff scenario with Dr. Warnock and Senator Loeffler. The world, the United States of America, will be focused on that race because there will be no other Senate race runoff. That means a lot of money, a lot of polarization, a lot of media, and a lot of contrast coming to this state.
And that's not the only seat up for grab. We have Senator David Perdue, along with Jon Ossoff in a race tonight. You've got Jon Ossoff's camp tweeting, remain calm. That should give, or do you feel that this is giving Senator David Perdue's camp a sense of maybe they're approaching victory here?
Well, I think so, and I want to speak very briefly on some of the points Rashad made, which is this Loeffler-Warnock race is going to be a very, very important race in January. The U.S. Senate and who has the majority could come down to that race. And what's going to put Loeffler, in my opinion, a difficult position is she's not going to have President Trump to drive out the turnout in rural Georgia. She is going to have to fend for herself and win it on her own. I think Warnock can be a very threatening and lethal candidate for the Republicans in Georgia. He is a preacher. A lot of the evangelical right in rural Georgia may be resonated by him. So the Republicans need to be fully ready to go. But to go back to your second question, I think that Ossoff needs to focus on building up a resume, building up a long-term career accomplishments for him to be viable at the state level, and I think the results show that tonight.
Jake Evans, Rashad Richey, gentlemen, thank you both